Hello everyone, welcome back. It's great to have you for the new season of EUROCONTROL Aviation StraightTalk Live. We have got a number of really interesting interviews lined up over the next few months. We're starting today with the CEO of TAP Airlines, Miss Christine Ourmières-Widener. It's absolutely a pleasure to welcome her. And as ever with Straight Talks, the thing we do first is we ask the Director General of EUROCONTROL, Mr. Eamonn Brennan, if he would bring us up to date with the market information and some of the interesting statistics. So Eamonn, if you'd be so kind.
Thank you, Andrew. It's great to start a new season of Straight Talk Live. Today we welcome Christine, who I've worked with for many years in Ireland, with great experience in running airlines, and I'm really looking forward to the chat between Andrew and Christine. But before we start, let's do our traditional thing and have a look at how things are operating in the network. Over the last month, we've very much stand in solidarity here in EUROCONTROL with Ukraine. Ukraine are a member state, and it's important that all of us work together to try and secure a resolution of this unprovoked aggression against Ukraine. So how does this affect us? Well, first of all, the closure of the Russian Federation airspace. Before the closure, everybody was going long haul to Asia via Russia. Afterwards, we're now going north and we're going south. And you can see this is having a major effect. Adds, for instance, 4 hours in a round trip between Frankfurt to Seoul. So you can imagine the CO2 effect that's having. Also, I think it's worthwhile looking at the knock-on effects, the jet fuel price. I mean, we're up 120% on a year ago. We're having economies having to change the way they look at various types of energy, such as nuclear and coal, etc. But for the aviation industry, this is a significant cost increase and will drive up ticket prices, I think, in the year to come. Also, I think what's also worth looking at really is the whole traffic situation in Europe. So what we're expecting in Europe at the moment is, where are we now? First of all, we're at 76% of where we were in 2019. We're nearly at 23,000 flights a day. This is really important when we think about it, because we're looking at a really, really good summer. We're looking at a strong Easter. Airlines are telling us that bookings are good, and we're looking at nearly getting back to the 2019 level before the summer break. So basically, the Ukraine crisis is not having a huge effect on the short-haul European traffic. It's more having an effect on long-haul traffic. And if we look at how the airlines are doing, Ryanair is up actually 13% on where it was in 2019. EasyJet has started to resume more service, Turkish, but you can see the effects on Lufthansa, minus 44%, British Airways, minus 36%, Scandinavian, minus 45%. So if you're a hub and spoke carrier, you're suffering more than if you're a low-cost carrier operating point to point. And this is really just the way that the market has started to evolve. Also, airports are having a difficult time. Remember, airports rely on passengers. The types of aircraft that are using European airports have got smaller. 747s have disappeared. Not so many 787s or A350s, because the long-haul network has contracted. And we are continuing to see, for instance, also a very difficult COVID situation in China, where they're trying to work their way out of this zero COVID policy, which really is, in my view, a recipe for disaster. Very difficult to get out of this situation. So from a general point of view, we projected back on the 15th of October, and this was before Omicron, along the blue line that you see there beside you. And what's interesting about it is, where are we? Well, over the next coming weeks, we think we're going to get back to about 80% of 2019 levels. We're expecting a strong summer. We're expecting a return to some air traffic control delays. And we're looking at really, starting to move forward very strongly over the next number of weeks. But one thing that's important is sustainability is not going to go away. Last week we had a strategic webinar. The Commission told us they will not loosen sustainability goals for aviation despite the war. And that's something that we all have to be aware of, is that sustainability will continue to be on the European agenda, and that's going to be something we all have to deal with. We're very pleased today to have TAP Portugal with us. Christine has done a wonderful job there, starting in a very difficult time in the middle of the pandemic. So, you can see with 243 flights a day, they're now at 73% of the 2019 levels. So, you've got a hard job ahead, Christine. issues in terms of airport capacity in Lisbon is also something that's important. And also, I'm sure Andrew will have a very good discussion with you about what it's like being one of the few female CEOs in our industry. And we're looking forward to seeing a lot more in the years ahead. Also, I think it's also worth mentioning that, trying to recover from the pandemic is a big challenge for Portugal, but also fleet modernisation. And of course, you, like all other airlines, are facing the net zero challenge. So the season of Straight Talks we have coming up next is the CEO of Qatar Airlines, and then we have Donald Slattery and Arne Schumann. The dates for all these will be announced in the weeks ahead. So stay with us, enjoy today. Over to you, Christine, and let's enjoy today.
Thank you, Eamonn. And Christine, welcome to Straight Talk. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for your invitation.
Oh, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure for a number of reasons, because in Straight Talk we've spoken to a lot of the mainline network, large airlines, BA, Lufthansa, KLM and so forth. But TAP has a different perspective, doesn't it? I mean this in the nicest way, but it's on the edge of Europe rather than in the middle, and it isn't one of Europe's largest airlines. Is that a fair summary of TAP?
I think yes. I think that we are first a unique position in Europe. We are in fact a western country of Europe and the gate to South America. So it is giving us a geographical, asset that we have definitely been identifying, and our fleet is consistent with this geographical position. We are flying, and we can fly our special aircraft, the 321LR, to the east coast of the US and the northeast coast of Brazil. So very efficient from a fuel burn, but also efficiency overall of the aircraft and the capacity that is consistent with the evolution of the market. That's one of the advantage that is the consequence of a geographical position. And also, maybe something important, a very trendy market, Portugal, that is now seen as the most, attractive tourism market in Europe and still growing. So we are combining a geographical position and also a very powerful destination, so that it's helping us.
Well, indeed. But nevertheless, TAP has over the last few years had a fairly difficult time. It was state-owned, it was privatised, it's been partially nationalised. You've had two different tranches of state aid. Is that, do you think, going to be the way for smaller airlines, that state ownership and state aid is going to have to be a fundamental part of it?
I think that state aid was a decision, as you can imagine, of the government, and now TAP SA is fully state-owned, so 100%. So it was also for them, and after exploring a number of options with different stakeholders, the only solution to see a sustainable future for the company. So I'm not saying that is maybe the first solution that you can put in place, but it was the best solution for TAP. Now we received the first half of the aid, and we will receive, after the finalization of the budget by the new Portuguese government, second half, a total of 3.2 billion, including COVID measures. So it's a lot of money, but at the same time, the analysis by the government was showing the importance for the economy, in part because of the geographical position, also Portugal, but also, from economical perspective, development, not only tourism, but also business links, the importance of a national carrier with a hub in Lisbon.
But let's analyse that. As a European carrier, how important do you think it remains for each of the countries of Europe to have their own airline?
Well, it's difficult for me to comment on other countries, but I think for obvious reason, airlines are, objectives are to, transport a customer from point A to point B. I think that the question is always, if an airline was not, existing, will we miss something, or why is the existence of any airline? And for TAP, the answer is quite clear. So we are providing a connection to South America and to a number of communities from Portugal that have been essential. We are the leading airline onto Brazil, for instance. And this, connectivity is quite fundamental, not only for Portugal, but also for most of European countries who are flying to Brazil via Lisbon. So,
but you said though, didn't you, that Portugal, and you're right, Portugal is a very trendy destination at the moment. Lisbon, Porto, other places, Faro, all very trendy. So, are you suggesting that other airlines wouldn't fly there, given how trendy it is?
Oh, we have a lot of competitor point to point, from and to Portugal, of course, and that has been definitely the evolution of the market. But our main core business, not only we fly point to point, but it's our hub and spoke operation in our hub of Lisbon. That's definitely our business model. So we compete with locals on point to point and with also legacy carrier. But our main core business, and where we need to be, very efficient, like everywhere we have to be, but even more is our core business, meaning our connectivity from Europe to and from, long-haul destination.
So on the right-hand side of your map, you're a low-cost carrier, or you're a point-to-point carrier, but on the left-hand side of your map, you're a network carrier. Is that how you see it?
I think that for all hub and spoke airline, you need to have the network to feed your hub. But at the same time, if you want to optimize your European network, you need also to be competitive on point to point. So you have to really be competitive on origin and destination, including long haul, but also on point to point to optimize any flight you fly, on your network.
So do you see, you mentioned earlier that you're using A321LRs on your long haul network as well as on your short haul network, is that right, or just on the long haul?
It's right, because the 321 is, technically speaking, a narrow body, but in fact we use it also on east coast of the US and northeast coast of Brazil, and also some destination in our network, such as Africa. So it's a very versatile aircraft. Just requires, the right infrastructure. And we have also the 330 900. So we have a new generation of aircraft. We have a most, recent fleet, very new fleet from 330 to all the 320, including 321 family. And then we have a regional fleet with an Embraer fleet in our subsidiary.
And of course, you've got obligations to fly to Madeira and to other Portuguese islands, I guess.
Well, it's more than an obligation, it's a business, because as you can imagine, this island have a lifeline, connection to the continent. So they need to fly to and from Portugal. We have Azores, we have Madeira, we have all the communities also in Africa and in South America. So it's quite an extensive network that has been inherited from the long history of discoveries from Portugal.
Indeed, historical connections are what drives a lot of airlines, of course, certainly the legacy airlines, and TAP is a very long-standing airline. Do you see, given how you've just described that you've got the point-to-point stuff, you've got the long haul, and that things are going, if I may say, it sounds like things are going very well. We heard from Eamonn in his video that you are back to 73% of your pre-crisis or your 2019 numbers, 243 flights a day. Do you see a way out of privatisation? Do you see yourselves going back to public ownership?
Well, as you can imagine, it's more a question.
Sorry, I've asked that question back to front, haven't I? Do you see your way to being privately owned? That's better. Now, I'm so sorry.
Well, I think that it's more question for our shareholder, but they already did some comment on this, saying that they will study. There is no obligation because now we are in a good financial position. They will study some potential option for the future. So that's something that at some point, depending on our results, but also how the evolution of the industry. So it's an option that has been commented upon by our shareholders. Just on our activity, in fact, we are back above 85% our capacity this summer, because I imagine the number you have as the number we fly today. But
indeed, yeah.
The reason is because, in a way, in vast, industry perspective, we don't fly to Asia. We don't fly also to Russia, for instance. So our destination have been showing maybe a more resilient evolution than compared to other.
So given the historical trending of airline networks and their empires, you don't fly to Macau? You don't fly to Goa?
We did
Nagasaki?
We did in the past, but we don't fly to the destination anymore.
Right, okay. Do you think Europe has too many airlines?
Well, I think that for me, everything starts and ends with network. I think it depends on network and the additional option that any airline would bring to a customer. Because at the end, everything we do is, offering option to the final customers. In our situation, we bring alternative options, not only to fly to unique destination, because we have unique destination, but we also give alternative also for North America, for instance. So I think it's depending on the value you bring to the final customer. That's the only question you need to ask yourself.
Well, except that the value given to the customers is not just a question of whether TAP can do it, or TAP or any other airline. My question, I guess, is how do you see European aviation in 5 years from now? Will it look very much like this, or will it look different?
I think everybody is talking about consolidation.
Yeah.
And,
well, let's talk about consolidation.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that consolidation is definitely a good way, if not the only way, to be more resilient. So I think that when we see all the difficulties that we had and have to face now, being the difficulty with border closure, or now the fuel cost increase, or maybe the interest rate or the foreign exchange rate, there is a need maybe more than ever of resilience. After that, the way you do it could be very different, from one organization to another.
Or if we consolidate by one organisation, I guess. But I'm really glad you've raised resilience, because I think that's the next really important topic that the airlines have to talk about. And of course, the fundamental question there is, how do we pay for it? Who pays for the resilience? Not just for the airlines, but of course for the airports, for the air navigation service providers, across the ecosystem. How do we pay for it?
I think it's a very quick question, because most of the time the only candidate seems to be the airlines, nobody else.
Which means the passengers, doesn't it?
Well, yes and no, because you have an elasticity of the demand that has to be considered. So, but I think it's a fair question. So I think today there are not many other options, and it looks like airlines always have to pay the bill for an expansion of airports, pay the bill for creating new solutions for industry, for a more sustainable industry. So, but I think it should be maybe something that is more shared by all players.
So by saying shared by all players, you also, I assume, include the government?
Absolutely, and I think that some of them are starting to look at it and it's not only, I think all governments look at the green agenda, their investment in production in renewable energy. So it will be different ways Because for us today, it's not only changing aircraft or having a new fleet, but it's also what will be the technology of tomorrow. And if any technology is delivered, who will produce and at which cost? We could, for instance, use SAF, or what will be the solution and when for hydrogen with a big investment that will be. So, I think the government have all a role to play because the investments are significant.
Well, indeed. Are SAFs the answer, or do you think we should just forget about SAFs and just jump straight to hydrogen?
Well, I share the vision of the industry that should be a mix of solution. Difficult to see on the short term that any magic solution. I'm a great supporter of hydrogen on the long term, and I work with an organization that is doing a very good job. But I think that we need also to have a number of options. So hydrogen with big investment that have to be done, sooner than later to be ready at some point. But also on SAF, finding more solution to have an affordability or competitiveness.
Well, there's two issues for SAF, aren't there? Are you comfortable that there's enough feedstock and whatever out there for us to really seriously move into the SAF environment?
Well, for me, it's difficult because last contact we had with a number of players here in Portugal, they definitely, had doubt that they could contribute at a significant level to our production. So I think that we have both subject, the production volumes and the cost of it.
Well, indeed, and that's the second issue I was going to ask you about, cost. How much more expensive than jet fuel can SAF be without us destroying our entire model?
I don't have this number. The only thing is that we are still in negotiation with some players. And I think that the business model will evolve. And it will not be like one day a model and the other day another model. But I think there will be a transition. So I know that all my colleagues have exactly the same questions. Some of them start to be investing a lot in SAF. We are just at the beginning of our road because we were in a very difficult situation before the approval of the restructuring plan. And now we are investing time in our sustainable agenda.
Right. And of course, I mean, I'm interested that you also work with some people in hydrogen, given that the two things you need to make hydrogen efficiently are salt water and sunshine, and Portugal's got quite a bit of that, more than most other places in Europe. So you might think that hydrogen was a serviceable way to go, but who am I to say? So, as you rightly say, around Europe, people are now starting to worry about the cost of SAFs, having, I think, is it fair to say, have we put COVID behind us? Is COVID over? Can we now look forward, do you think?
I think that it's a perception, but we have to be cautious and make sure we don't forget what we learn. I think that we still have on board safe and clean measures, so the same measures. We still ask our customer to wear masks, same for our crew. And that's a recommendation also from our national regulator, and we have a constant discussion. I think that is really important to make sure that we have a clear communication to our customers, and we are, monitoring, their feedback. So I think that it will be difficult to forget, that's for sure. But we need also to learn a lot about what we have been through.
Yeah, well, and indeed.
Be prepared, hopefully, to be better prepared if something similar is happening in the future. So I hope that we learned how to manage better a crisis like this.
Right. I suspect this is an irrelevant question, but Eamonn talked about it, so I'll ask you anyway. The war in Ukraine at the moment is... What's TAP's position vis-a-vis that?
Well, we are absolutely embracing... we don't fly to Russia anymore. We don't have any more business relationship with Russia, of course. We have been supporting all the repatriation of Ukrainian citizens that have a family relationship or relationship in Portugal. We have been putting in place capacity, charters, cargo to help also the horrible situation that is happening in Ukraine. So we are trying as much as possible, not of course flying to Ukraine, but we fly to Poland. So we are using our Polish routes to help as much as we can. Supporting the government or initiative by some different association as much as we can. So that's the way we see our contribution to this horrible, event.
But just to be clear, did you fly to Russia before?
No,
you
no,
didn't.
we stopped during the pandemic. So we were planning to fly again this summer, and as you can imagine, we decided to postpone.
Yes, indeed.
The relaunch of the route.
Well, I can't think why. One, can I perhaps? I mean, you are sadly, Christine, I have to say, one of the very few females that we've had on Straight Talk. Why are there so few women in senior management in aviation?
I think that it's something that first is changing because I'm not the only one. So that's also an improvement when I see my colleagues of Air France, Air Transat, or Joanna in JetBlue and others that are amazing women. I think it's just we need to see in the airline industry what we can see in other industry, because I think that most of people don't see that aviation, it's not only the glamour of the advertising and what we communicate, it's first and foremost a production structure. So
it's a logistics business.
Exactly, and in logistics, and also very analytical because everything starts with network, so it's analytical. It's so that's we have to benchmark ourselves to industries that are really on this side. So it's difficult in this industry for a number of reasons, but our role and our mission is to make it different, to make a difference. My duty is to make a difference in my organization, and like all leaders, we make a difference, and we need to identify talents, grow them, promote them, and prepare them for the next level. So that's what we have to do. But I think that the understanding, the acknowledgement of the industry has been in itself a huge improvement compared to maybe 20 years ago.
Well, I mean, if we have to go back 20 years to find a difference, that's a damning indictment, isn't it? Do you believe in quotas? Should we be having quotas for females in various positions and levels of positions?
It's an interesting question. Let's say, I'm a very pragmatic person. I think that if it works without quotas, it's fine.
Does it work without quotas? Is it working without quotas?
Well, I'll say if we don't achieve our objective without quotas, we need to think about quotas.
And what sort of time frame? I mean, if we don't achieve it by...
I think that there is an objective that was defined by IATA 25 by 25 in senior positions. So will be interesting to measure where we are in 25. And then
which is only 3 years away. So
exactly.
And what percentage of females in your management team at TAP?
Well, in fact, in our executive committee is 50-50.
50-50.
So that's quite good compared to, if I may, other airlines.
Yeah, well, indeed.
And we are not good for our pilots. We are not even at 5%, so we need to do some improvement. Right. That's a full program that we have to start. We are much better with our engineers. We have above 20% of engineers.
Perhaps.
So it's for each population, you need to deep dive, understand what are the rationales, what type of communication, and how do you move forward. But I think it should be a project, and it should be a priority not only for me, but for my team and for each directors in the organization.
Indeed, your background is in engineering as well.
Yes.
At the risk of sounding like a dinosaur, that would have historically been regarded as quite a masculine industry, wouldn't it, engineering? I speak as the son of an
Yeah.
engineer.
Well, in fact, when I started in my career, I was in a hangar in close to the CDG airport, and I was absolutely the only woman in the hangar.
Yeah.
But
Indeed.
honestly, it was a great experience. I was very, I learned a lot. I work with amazing people. And that's why also I stayed in industry. The first experience is always very important. But they wanted just to help me more than anything else.
Right. So you're an engineer, and at TAP, 20% of your engineers are female as well. I'm just interested that it seems to have skewed in that direction rather than in, for example, piloting or maybe in management or whatever.
I think I think for me it's a coincidence, because in pilot we could have at least, compared to other European airlines, we need to communicate to schools that pilot is also something that a woman can definitely think about as a career, because it's you can organize yourself, you have a roster, so you are away from home, but you could be full-time at home and just organize your life. So it's a message we need to communicate to more schools, maybe high school to start with, because it's where some choices are made by girls, and make sure that they see themselves becoming a pilot. We say in Portugal, comandante, so that also has a connotation.
Sounds impressive. So moving back to the environment for a minute, do you think we have, the European requirement is that we reduce emissions generally by 55% by 2030, destination 2050, which is the airlines proposition, skips over the 2030 target but aims to be carbon neutral by 2050. Is that even likely, do you think? Is that at all possible?
I think for us, we see a big difference when for any airline, if you want to move quickly the needle, today the solution is to have a very, a very modern fleet.
Right.
The only caveat is it's quite a significant investment.
Indeed it is.
So, and after the pandemic, everybody knows that airlines have to restore a stronger balance sheet. So I think that's where airlines also are trying to move forward by having this fleet plan. So that's one initiative. And after that, it's about decarbonization, how you can compensate. So we all have plans that we have to revise and reforecast, depending on our activity and also investment plan with our fleet. But I think that all of us are looking at the horizon, and we know that is the most important strategic priority that we need to deliver, because it's an expectation from our customers.
Do you think that, I risk being very general here, but do you think that the environmental movement, the Gretas of this world, understand the sort of timeframes involved in fleet planning and fleet changing and fleet upgrades?
Absolutely not. But
so how do we fix that? How do we sort that problem out?
But at the same time, I think that they are bringing an inspiration and they are bringing a message. Of course, they are not, managing airlines, but and we don't expect them to do so because they have other, ambitions. But I think the message is very strong. We have to respect the message, understand that is a voice of a generation or a population that are our customers.
And your next generation of customers.
Exactly. And the diversity of our customer makes also, future of airlines. So I think that even if they don't understand, I think they are bringing on the table what they would like to see happening, and they're expecting a commitment from the leaders of the industry. So after that, I'm not saying I agree with all the ways that the messages have been, communicated, but for me, is just to accept it's a message of a generation, maybe S, because not all young generation have the same expectation, but we need to respect and to listen to them.
But that's the start, isn't it? But isn't the truth is that our message isn't getting through at the moment. So do we change the message? Do we just say the message louder? What's the solution?
I think communication is key, and our colleagues in IATA have been trying to communicate even more. I think we need to communicate what we are doing, what we can do, what is easy to do. But because at the end of the day, the airlines are flying aircraft with engines, but we don't manufacture aircraft, we don't manufacture engines. So we can try to push, we can try to do a lot of things, but we need the full collaboration of also our manufacturers, being aircraft, airframe or engine. So the airlines are seen as the guilty of the game, but maybe communicate about also the broader ecosystem where the commitments of all the players are important. And I understand what is easy to point fingers on airlines, but at the end of the day, we are operators of wonderful, aircraft that are manufactured by others, with engine manufactured by others. So we need to push the message on our willingness to be part of the solution as operators by investing, by finding solutions, by decarbonizing. But we should not be the only one targeted to find solutions.
Is part of the solution, I think, to try to separate flying, which can be done with very low carbon, versus emissions. The more we can explain to people that flying isn't the same as emitting, does that give us an opportunity to start to find different ways to get the message out there? But all that said, the other thing that of course is happening with enormous pressure from the transport lobbies and so forth is for more tax on aviation fuel. One assumes tax on fossil fuels but not on SAFs. But is that inevitably where we're going to go?
Well, it's the trend we see today, and again, it will impact our cost structure. So the need for more resilience. I think that all airlines agree that we have to find alternative option. It's not only that, we have also a tax for tax. So because it's a way also, it's an easy way for government to tax airlines. It's a very easy industry to tax. So and in all countries now we have tax that have different names, but at the end of the day, most of the time the tax also are not structured to invest in having a greener aviation. They could be used to invest in other modes of transportation. So, and that's something that we have to all lobby for, to make sure we are investing in a greener aviation.
Which sort of brings us back to the resilience point, doesn't it? I mean, a greener aviation is going to be more resilient when the next crisis hits. It's going to be more attractive to passengers and so forth. How do we get people to understand this is an interconnected ecosystem, to use the word you used? I mean, how do we do that?
I think there are many stakeholders, and I think it's about communication by each airlines first, but also by our association, being FOE or being IATA, for instance. They have a great role and a great mission to communicate. So IATA also created a specific now dedicated organization for sustainability. So there is now a very powerful action plan that are put in place. When you look at the subject of FOE this year, is quite focused on sustainability, as it should. But it's not only sharing our experience, but also trying to share solutions and using the power association to try to pass a message. But it's not an easy one.
No. And what about the resilience and indeed the sustainability of your partners, the airports and the ANSPs? How do we make the whole system sustainable and strong?
Well, I think that, as you know, airports and aviation airlines have an interesting relationship.
I think it's fair to call it love-hate.
But I think that we could move to another type of relationship to find together a solution, because airports are moving to electric mobility on the ground. So we can find also solutions that could fit also to so new solution. But I think the plans need to be now built together to prepare the next 20 years, because it's what we are talking about. And the infrastructure on the ground is key. So I don't see any solution built with airlines not talking to airports. We have to work together.
And what about ANSPs? What's your relationship with the ANSPs of Europe?
Well, I think it's we have a good relationship, and we are, trying to see what are the evolution, what will be the impact. But I think that we could work maybe with a more, let's say, discussion on a regular basis.
Is there room for consolidation between the airlines, the airports and the ANSPs? Is that one of the ways we go forward?
Well, I think it's a bit complicated because if you talk about a vertical consolidation, there are rules in Europe, and as you know, very difficult rules. Quite for us in Portugal, our airports are privatized, so it could be a little bit complicated, if I
Yes,
may.
indeed. Well, or you could be taken over by them, of course. But
maybe, but I think that it's not always by a corporate move that you can improve also relationships. So I think that it's always the same. We could start by a good commercial relationship and building project together, and then who knows?
Okay. Well, moving out again and looking sort of at European aviation, who do you see as your biggest competitor?
Well, it's a good question. It depends on which type of traffic.
Okay.
So
short haul, who do you see as your
short
biggest
haul, we are talking about low cost. We have, yes, I think all European low cost flying into Portugal. On long haul hub and spoke, so it depends on the origin and destination. We have quite a number of unique destinations in South America where the competition is not really doesn't have really presence. But we are competing then with all alliances,
Right.
on our main destination, because we fly from Europe to North America, from Europe to Africa. So we compete with we are in Star Alliance with our partners, and we compete with other alliances that are flying ONDs that could be similar, or more complex ONDs that could compete with our ONDs.
So if a small airline CEO walked up to you at the A4E meeting tomorrow and asked you, should I join an alliance, what would you say?
Well, I think it's for us in Star Alliance, we have code shares with our main partner. Is how you measure, the value to your network and the revenue that you generate from the other airline, and the airline same for your partner. So I think that in airline we'll have to measure what could be the benefit on entering in an alliance and having a set of partners with code shares, and to see what would be the benefit. Also the capacity to exchange with partners on some, for instance, subjects such as cybersecurity or technology, and having specific, discussion that are possible in an alliance. I think it's a mix of know-how, experience, but also commercial relationships that are really preferred and easier in an alliance compared to, not being in an alliance.
So
But
on balance, you would say yes.
Yes, I think, but again, it will be different depending where you fly, what is your network,
Right.
Which alliance, and you have to do the business case.
Well, indeed. So that we've run out of time. I'd love to talk to you more about where you see your future network going and so forth. But I always end Straight Talks with a question to you, which is what more can EUROCONTROL do to help you?
Well, I think it's all about efficiency. So I think that EUROCONTROL, like all players, I know that EUROCONTROL is working a lot on simplifying, the routes, the way we fly, and optimizing, our whole operation. And that's what we need. We need resilience of our sky. We need straight routes, trying to minimize as much as possible our fuel consumption. And that we need more and more with the current situation.
Well, thank you very much. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure you agree that that was really fascinating, and it was great to get the perspective of a smaller carrier in Europe and a very seasoned and experienced CEO in the form of Christine, and I'm very grateful to her for her time. I look forward to seeing you again very soon. We've got a number of really interesting programs coming up, as Eamonn mentioned, and thank you very much for your time, and I wish you all a very good day.